Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation on digital divide. Here are the terms that relate to my topic. Digital divide, the gulf between those who have ready access to computers and the internet and those who do not. Another term that relates to my topic is broadband. Broadband is high capacity transmission technique using a wide range of frequencies which enables a large number of messages communicated simultaneously. So I have a quick video that explains digital divide.
We hear the term digital divide tossed around a lot, but what does it mean? Simply put, digital divide is an inequality between groups to access, knowledge, and use of information and communication technologies. All three are necessary to level the technology playing field. The divide can refer to technology inequality within a country based on factors like age, education, race, income, and gender. It is also commonly used to describe global disparities between developed and developing countries. This disparity is commonly tied to access to the internet and opportunities derived from it. The internet has developed unevenly through the world, causing some countries to not fully reap its benefits. They have fallen behind in technology, education, democracy, and access to goods and services. However, the past decade has seen a steady decrease in worldwide costs of telephone and broadband internet services. This reduction in costs has expanded access to communication and information technology by developing countries. Developing countries are making great strides towards narrowing the digital divide.
So my issue from a secular or cultural perspective. The digital divide is a problem that seems to affect minorities the most. Under the Clinton administration, there were very costly attempts to fix the digital divide. Although a huge part of the problem is that people don't have access to technological devices, another part of the problem is that people who have technological devices do not use them to their max potential on the internet. Statistically, people who have one electronic device, their phone, were more digitally divided than people who had a phone and a laptop. Phones can do a lot of things laptops can do. It is just more challenging to use. People need to not only have access to technology, but be educated on how to use and utilize it. Digital divide is a worldwide problem and it affects many people in poverty. Especially in times like now, it is important for people to be digitally connected. When put in quarantine, it really makes you see how lucky we are to be digitally connected. We would not even be able to be in school and get educated if we were digitally divided. Being digitally divided can cause people to be socially disconnected. Being digitally connected helps with social mobility. People can learn skills, become educated, and can be social through the internet. Digital divide plays into digital equity. Digital divide creates a certain type of discrimination. Digital equity is a social justice issue that desires everyone to have equal access to information and communication technologies. People that are digitally divided have an unfair disadvantage. Digital divide not only affects people individually, but affects entire countries. Because some countries have access to technology and the internet, they grow rapidly, when other countries do not have that benefit. Closing the digital divide would benefit the world in many ways. Ending the digital divide will help with economic equality. Technology helps people in health, criminal, and other types of emergencies. Vital information for a person's career, safety, and life can be provided on the internet. Social welfare services can also be accessed and used through the internet. All of these things contribute to economic equity. Ending the digital divide is important for economic growth. Technology has been associated with improvements in productivity. Education should include the use of a computer. Children who use technology in their education have an advantage over children who don't have access to that technology. Digital divide is unfair to children in poverty who do not have access to the information that other people have. Ending the digital divide will also help democracy because it will increase public participation in politics. Technology should be considered an essential need and would benefit the world if everyone had access to it. So, the church's position and the church documents. The first church document is called Ethics in the Internet. This church document talks about how the digital divide represents a problem that affects everyone. Digital divide develops a type of discrimination similar to the gap between information among poor and rich. Digital divide separates the wealthy who possess the ability to access technology and the poor who experience a lack of information and technology. Countries, nations, people, societies, and groups need to have the ability to obtain modern technology to prevent dropping farther back. This church document talks about how current technology will enable people to experience the advantages of globalization and development. The church believes that there needs to be innovative ways that will allow those without technology to be able to obtain it. The church believes that cyberspace should be a free resource of information and services with many languages and tools to assist people who are using it. The church wants the victors in the new economy to be humanity altogether, but they worry it will be a wealthy class that controls everything. The church desires that globalization will benefit every person. The second article is called Social Networking Protocol for the Catholic Church in Australia. This document shows how the church is concerned that the majority of the world can't afford devices that allow them to access the internet. Many places in the world that are usually divided possess little access to education, books, and other things that can be found on the internet. This document shows how the church is concerned about how the digital divide can make people socially divided. Many people are connected and talk through and talk about the internet, which can be extremely isolating for people who can't access the internet. Even though the church believes the internet to be beneficial, they also believe social networking should never replace real relationships with people, and particularly in ministry contexts. Catholics should try to avoid replacing face-to-face relationships with individuals with digital relationships. The third church document is called The Church and the Internet. This church document talks about how Catholics are encouraged to think of God when using social media. Christ represents the perfect communicator. The church asks Catholics to exercise some self-control on the internet. We should use the internet for good and enlightenment, not to promote evil, spread cruelty, or ignorance. Personally, I have a cross as my lock screen to remind myself to be forgiving and kind-hearted to the people and the things I will see on my screen before I enter my phone. When they can and when it's appropriate, Catholics should use technology to preach the admirable things of Jesus. We can see this church document being played out right now in our everyday lives while we're in quarantine. The church is currently using technology so their members can still participate in church. Currently, many churches are live streaming Sunday Mass. And even if a person's particular church is not live streaming, they can always join another church's stream. This church document also talks about how fixing the digital divide is a crucial part of solidarity. The fourth article is called Vatican Documents About Internet, Warn of Digital Divide. This church document talks about how the church believes the internet is extremely powerful and should not be thought of as a problem. According to Vatican City, the internet is an opportunity and a challenge and not a threat. The internet should be thought of as something that can remedy our problems and as something that can be an enormous benefit to the human race. According to the American Archbishop, the fundamental principles of the internet are the same for those those for other forms of communication. The human person and the human communities are the end and measure of the use of the media of social communication. Communication should be by persons to persons for the integral development of persons. The document explains that even though the internet may have problems, the church chooses to see the good in it and sees the internet possessing the power to make every person in the world connected to one another. If the problems of the internet can be corrected, the benefits of the internet could be clearly seen by most people. The charity organization I chose that relates to my topic is called the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. The organization was founded by a woman named Angela Seifer in May 2015. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance is a nonprofit organization and has 338 affiliated organizations as members. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance serves those who are digitally divided. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance is a voice that advocates for every single person to have personal technological devices and access to technology programs at home and in public. They work with many people to spread opportunity, resources, and money for digital inclusion programs while also connecting the general people to policymakers. On the National Digital Inclusion Alliance website, they have an area called 4 Pillars, which basically describes their mission. Pillar 1 is to support on-the-ground digital inclusion, practitioners, and advocates. Pillar 2 is to advocate for local, state, and federal policies to promote digital equity and support local digital inclusion strategies. Pillar 3 is educate policymakers, the media, and potential partners about the need for digital equity and the work of local digital inclusion programs. Pillar 4 is conduct, support, and promote data gathering and research that can inform public understanding, public policy, and community strategies related to digital inclusion and equity. The pillars and the missions of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance is to educate people on digital divide and do everything they can in their power to end it. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance works by influencing policymakers to provide home broadband access, public broadband access, personal devices, and local technology training and support programs. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance works with many people and organizations to make, identify, and spread financial and operational resources for digital inclusion programs while serving as a bridge to policymakers and the general public. So the woman that relates to my topic is named Sister Simone Campbell. Sister Simone Campbell, in my opinion, is a really incredible person. Sister Simone Campbell has dedicated her life to bringing people together, which is something ending the digital divide would do. Simone has done many great things to help people become equal and has been the executive director of Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice since 2004. Simone started the Nuns on the Bus tour, which got immense amount of attention. This bus tour fought against the Ryan budget, which would get rid of programs that aided people in need. Since the first tour, Simone has had 6 more tours that have focused on issues like economic justice, immigration reform, and mending gaps in wealth and access in America. Simone wrote the Nuns Letter, which supported the 2010 healthcare reform bill and brought 59 Catholic sisters to sign on. This was important in passing the Affordable Care Act. Among other things, Sister Simone Campbell believes that the Catholic Church should not deny communion to political figures who have created policies that go against church teaching. She believes the Eucharist is for those of us who are struggling. Sister Simone Campbell did not agree with the bishops when they opposed the Equality Act, which would help ban discrimination against LGBT people, or when they were against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, which forbids federal funding of abortion. Sister Simone Campbell strives for solidarity and to make everyone feel welcomed. Simone Campbell was also against the Vatican for scrutinizing religious women by calling some of them radical feminists, and shunning them for striving to help healthcare reform and for not overly attacking abortion. Although it was insulting, this did not discourage Simone Campbell. Simone Campbell walks with those who are least and last and lonely, and is a message she wants to bring every place she goes. Sister Simone Campbell believes that people have the power to make a change. She believes that all people are important and that nobody should be left out. She is concerned about the growing number of income disparities. She lobbies issues that help fix the gaps in incomes and wealth in the U.S. and brings to light how these things affect people of color and women differently. She encourages everyone to vote and use their voice to pass policies that will help and make people equal. Sister Simone Campbell is a huge advocate of solidarity and bringing people together, which ending the digital divide would do. So this is the video that addresses my topic.
This child mends shoes at the tender age of 11. He attends a school, knowing that the odds are against him.
خلص المدرسة وبروح الشغل. مفيش إنترنت في المدرسة. لو دخل الكمبيوتر في المدرسة هيحسن التعليم عندنا.
Without access to the internet, he is slipping further into the trap of poverty. In a nearby neighborhood, we meet a young girl. She is sadly on the wrong side of the digital divide.
نفسي أعرف الكمبيوتر والإنترنت بس بالذات في الدراسات.
This is how technology can drive continents, classes, and generations apart. And the gap is widening, like a wound between those that are privileged and others that are disenfranchised. The disenfranchised are constantly facing the struggle to connect because of where they live. That is half of our world's population today, now defined as digitally illiterate. This man lives in an area called the City of Graves. He has little chance of escaping the dreadful surroundings.
الإنترنت دخل عندنا عيالها تتعلم أكتر ويزيدوا ذكاء.
The digital divide separates and disadvantages the poorest people. They are the ones that are most likely to benefit from having access to the internet. And without digital technology, a country's potential for economic growth is hindered, making it even more challenging to compete in our global economy. This is their reality, and this is our challenge. We need to harness new solutions that bridge the digital divide. We have to rethink networks, satellites, and technology to make connectivity a universal right. And by scaling our efforts, we can find new ways to avail reliable and affordable internet access.
Access to data is becoming really important, or is really important in terms of ordinary community members, just to be involved, to be included. Whether it's online banking, being able to communicate with people, the poorer you are, the more expensive data costs.
So, are you the one? If you were given the chance to change a life, what would you do? To connect, to create, to empower, and to give hope, not just to people, but to nations and continents everywhere. Because we believe that access to innovation paves the way to building prosperity.
And these are my questions. Despite the fact that a person can gain an immense amount of knowledge, can connect with their surroundings, friends, and many studies showing how beneficial the internet can be, there are many people who believe that the internet causes problems and that cutting people off from it will solve problems. Why do you think people believe this? Have you or someone you know have ever been digitally divided? And if so, what problems did you or they encounter when trying to live their daily lives? How can the digital divide be considered a civil rights issue, and how can it be similar to many other problems that we are trying to overcome? According to multiple studies, a big part of the problem of why people are digitally divided is because they weren't using the devices they had to access the internet. In some studies, generally, people who had a phone were more digitally divided than people who had a computer and a phone. Since a phone and a laptop can do similar things, why do you think this phenomenon happens? Question 5. When you think about it, what are some of the ways you see digital divide affecting your life, the people around you, and your surroundings? Question 6. Do you think that if everyone around the world had access to the internet and technology, that would help further everyone's society? Do you think it is possible that ending the digital divide would backfire and cause people to become stuck or go backwards? If you think the end of digital divide will help the world progress, what things do you think we could achieve if we were all connected to each other? How might the end of digital divide backfire? Question 7. Digital divide persists to be a problem for many, even though a person can buy a $20 phone off Amazon. Why do you think the digital divide is such a huge problem? What are some ways you think we can solve the issue of digital divide in America? Question 8. When thinking about a person's needs, technology is usually not one of them. People often think things such as food, water, clothing, and shelter are essential for what people need to live. When we live in a world where staying digitally connected is important for almost any kind of work and social life, why do you think some people do not think the internet is a necessity? Question 9. Based on what you know about the digital divide, do you think the digital divide will grow in the future, or will the gap start to close? Question 10. During my research, I learned that digital divide is a more common problem among women, people of color, Hispanics, and other minorities. I was surprised to learn this considering the first computer programmer was a woman named Ada Lovelace. Why do you think the digital divide is more common in these groups of people?